know that there are a lot of women who have had men behave inappropriately with them, and they just have never spoken out about it for whatever reason. But I know many of them probably never spoke out for fear of the repercussions, right? People always seem to treat the person who was wronged in a crappy way, right? I was about 20 or 21 years old. I know I hadn't even made 23 years old yet. And I was working in like the semiconductor industry. I was working, there were like hundreds and hundreds of people working at the same time. It was a huge factory that we were working in. So anyhow, I went through training. You know how they have training before you actually start your first day? Went through that, and I met several people. I met a girl and a guy that I actually kind of clicked with and started hanging out with a little bit. The girl and I remained friends for several years after that. The guy and I, we hung out a few times, but even at our young age, he was a bit too immature. I couldn't do it too long, child. Anyway, one time we were hanging out, his roommate came, and we were all just sitting around chatting and having beers, and I mean, we was kicking it. I guess his roommate thought that that meant he was familiar with me. I do not like people thinking that they are too familiar with me, because you don't know me. I don't care if you have known me for 15 years. You don't know me. So anyhow, we're all back at work, right? Like the guy that I was friends with, he was so flaky. He was not showing up for work. He was doing all kind of crazy stuff. I don't think he really wanted the job. But his friend was always there, always working. And in passing, we would say, hello, hey, because I'm acquainted with you, but that's about it. Well, one day, his friend thought that it was appropriate for him to, instead of wave his hand, lower it to smack me on my hind parts. Instinctively, I turned around and punched him in the chest, because who does that? To which he chuckled like, oh girl, I see you next time. By the way, he was not native to the United States. So for all I know, that was common in the country where he's from, right? I let it be. I thought it was done. But then the next day, the next time we saw each other, he did the same thing. And I got really pissed off. And I had some choice words for him. And I told him, you do that again, my guy, we're going to have some serious issues. And by we, I mean you. Third time's a charm. I knew his manager, right? I was like, when I say I knew these people, I mean, it was cordial. Hello, how you doing? That's it. You know what I mean? And for me, I kind of figured maybe this was a cultural difference. And instead of just going to HR on him and getting him fired, silly young me, I'm thinking about trying to protect you instead of just not really caring what happens to you, because you don't care about boundaries. So I pull his manager to the side and I tell his manager what he has done. And his manager was like, very serious, obviously. He was like, are you kidding me? I'm like, no. So immediately he calls him over there, which in retrospect, I don't really know, but he calls him over there and he asks him, he tells him what I've said. And the guy was like, yeah. And the manager was like, are you well? You're saying that you did what she is saying that you did. And he was like, yeah. The manager was like, but you cannot do that. Do you realize that if she had just gone to HR on you, that you would likely no longer have a job? And in saying that to him, he was like, what? So his manager asked me, do you want to escalate this to HR or, how do you want me to handle it? And I was like, I just don't want him to put his hands on me no more. Like, if we can get there, then that's cool. We can just let it be. He don't have to lose his job over it, right? I leave, go on about my day. And his manager has a conversation with him and that's it, right? I see this guy later on And his energy, of course, has shifted because now he's gotten in trouble. So now it's just like, I'm not saying anything to you. He would just look, but just keep walking. And I started to notice that the other people with whom I was cordial with, the other men and even the women, we're going to get to them, but the other men were all giving me the cold shoulder. People who I would typically speak to, hey, Mr. Such and Such. That's how they looked. That's how they acted. Nobody wanted to talk to me anymore. And as far as the women, people who I'd considered friendly, were also being a bit nice, nasty. Like, they clearly had been hearing things about this, right? As the days went on, they clearly had been hearing things about it. But do you think any one of them came to me and said, yo, this is what's going on? Or are you okay? Or the answer is no. Because regardless, in my experience, regardless, when it comes to men, pick me women are gonna choose them every single time. I didn't even want none of them old ass men up there. Like, let's just be clear about that. I didn't want any of those pops up at that job. Like, but here I am, a young woman, a young cute woman, because you see it. And automatically I'm competition, even though I'm not even trying to be competition. I am just saying hello to people. I am just being cordial to people. I am just being kind to people who were at the time being kind to me. Nothing more, nothing less. And let me tell you something. The only way I found out what was actually being said about me and what was going around and why people were treating me like crap is when a new guy came on. So everybody, like, it was structured in a way where you were working in shifts, right? You got a shift that works Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And then the hours are people working in the daytime, people working at nighttime, right? So this guy worked on a shift opposite of mine, and he came in on overtime, and we caught eyes. And I ain't gonna lie, he caught my eye, okay? At that time, he was my cup of tea. You understand? So I want to say this was like the last big Tyson fight or something. Somebody was having a fight party, and we both ended up being there. And we started chatting it up, and things progressed from there. And we're going to have to go off on another story time, because come to find out, he had a girlfriend. That's another story for a different day. Now, me and this guy end up being friends for years, right? But at some point, he says to me, if I had listened to people, we wouldn't even be cool right now. And of course, I'm like, I'm sorry, what? He says, when I first started here, everybody, not just men and women, were telling me, oh, don't talk to her because she'll get them people in your life. Oh, you should probably still steer clear of her. She's not a good person to be talking to. The men and the women. And his response to them was, but she seemed cool to me. Like, she ain't never done nothing out the way to me. And their response was, well, she got such and such in trouble because she went and told on them. Only telling half the story, of course. But he and I had a laugh about it. But it really wasn't funny at all. And at some point, I ended up having to advocate for myself and tell a couple of people where they could get off, because at least one of those little pops took it upon himself to tell me I was out of my place for telling on that boy. What? I usually try to be a bit respectful of my elders, but baby, you just slapped me in my face. So I had to ask him, would you tell your daughter or your niece or your wife or your cousin that same stupid line that you just told me? Or are you one of those that like to touch on little girls? Just be honest. Needless to say, he didn't say anything else to me. But I share this story because I know I'm not the only one who has experienced some really disrespectful and out of line behavior from men. And they've gotten away with it because not only the men stand up for them, but the women stand up for them as well. And that's just mind blowing. I am always going to say, stand up for yourself. Because if you don't speak out, then it will just continue. And it doesn't matter if in that moment you feel like you are standing alone. There are women like me who will have your back. There are also men who will have your back. I know that that may be a controversial thought, because it's always been bros before hoes, but there are men who consider their daughters, their wives, their cousins, their nieces, their family members when stories like this come out and they don't like it. Let's talk again soon. And if you like this shirt, hit up our community store. We got some cool merch in there.